I never thought I'd have to choose between the people who raised me and the person I loved most in the world. But the truth is, the choice had already been made for me long before I walked down the aisle. I just didn't realize it yet. It started small, like it always does. A cold comment here. A tense dinner there. A silent stare stretched 1 second too long across the table. When my husband, Aaron, and I got married 2 years ago, I believed, naively, that love could bridge generations of difference. That my family, steeped in tradition and expectation, would eventually come to accept the man I chose. That they would see him the way I saw him, steadfast, thoughtful, and gentle in a world that rarely rewarded such things. But I was wrong. They never accepted him. Not fully. Not even halfway. They smiled through their teeth at the wedding. My father gave a speech so brief and void of emotion it was practically a weather report. My mother wore red instead of the traditional white AO dye I had asked for, to protect against bad luck, she said. But I knew better. Red was her shield. Her subtle way of saying, I do not approve. Aaron is not Vietnamese. He's Irish-American, born and raised in Oregon, and speaks only the 5 Vietnamese phrases I taught him before we visited my parents the first time. Hello, thank you, delicious, I'm sorry, and I love your daughter. It was enough to make them smile politely. But not enough to win them over. And that was the beginning. At first, they said nothing. They just stopped inviting us over. Stopped calling. I was the one reaching out. The one driving across town with banh mi and mangoes from the farmer's market, hoping to soften the edges of their disapproval. Sometimes they'd let me in. Sometimes they wouldn't. Sometimes they opened the door and pretended not to notice that Aaron was waiting in the car. He never complained. Not once. He told me, gently, this is part of who you are. I'll wait as long as I need to. He meant it. But time has a way of testing even the most patient hearts. The real fracture began 6 months ago, when my younger brother, Duy, got engaged. His fiancée, Lynn, was everything my parents had hoped for in a daughter-in-law. Vietnamese. Catholic. Modest. Respectful. She brought papaya salad to every family dinner and never interrupted when elders spoke. She laughed softly, bowed slightly, and never wore anything sleeveless to a family gathering. I liked her. Truly. But I could see it happening before anyone said a word. My mother began comparing. Lynn made this with her own hands. Lynn said she'd move in with Dewey's parents if needed. Lynn's family sent such beautiful gifts. And then the dagger, you know, some girls would be lucky to learn from Lynn. I didn't respond. But Aaron noticed. He always noticed. He squeezed my hand under the table that night, and I couldn't tell if he was trying to comfort me or hold himself back from saying something. The real confrontation came 2 weeks before Dewey's wedding. My parents asked to have lunch with me. Just me. We met at a faux place on 10th and Alder, one they used to take me to when I was little. It felt strange sitting across from them again, without Aaron, without distractions. My mother started gently, as she always did. We want to talk to you about the wedding. I nodded. We're really happy for Duy. I got their registry gifts already. My father's face stayed blank. We want to ask you not to bring Aaron. The words landed like a slap I hadn't braced for. I blinked. Excuse me? It's not about him, my mother added quickly. It's about the family. About the image. The elders will be there. The aunts and uncles. Some have never even accepted your marriage. I stared at them, stunned. So you want me to attend my own brother's wedding without my husband? It's just for one day, my father said. We're not asking for forever. But that was the lie, wasn't it? They weren't asking for one day. They were asking for a line to be drawn. A declaration. He is not one of us. He is not yours, not truly, not if you want to belong here. I left the restaurant without finishing my meal. Aaron was waiting in the car when I got back, as he often did. He smiled and reached for my hand, but I pulled it away before I even realized what I was doing. He noticed. He always noticed. "You okay?" he asked. "No," I said. And for once, I didn't lie. That night, I lay awake next to Aaron and listened to him breathe. I wondered how I got here, how loving someone could become such an act of rebellion. How the family who raised me could turn love into a battleground. And how I had spent years trying to make peace where none was ever being offered. The next morning, my mother called. Her voice was calm. I had already missed 3 calls. "Lena, you have to understand," she began. "This is about more than you. This is about tradition. About face. The family cannot lose face in front of the community." "What about me?" I asked. "Do I count?" There was a pause. Long enough to know the answer. "You're our daughter. But there are things even you cannot change." I told Aaron everything that night. Every word. He sat quietly. Then he stood up, walked to the window, and leaned against the frame with his back to me. "So what are you going to do?" he asked. I didn't answer. Because I didn't know. For the first time in our marriage, the silence between us wasn't comfortable. It was breaking. I didn't sleep the night after I told Aaron. I stared at the ceiling and tried to count my breaths, tried to steady the rising tide inside me, but nothing worked. I could feel the decision pressing against my chest like a boulder. Attend the wedding without him and keep the peace with my family, or take a stand and risk severing everything I'd ever known. Aaron didn't push me. He made coffee the next morning, left a muffin on my desk, and didn't say a word. That was the thing about him, he gave me space when I needed it, even when it hurt him. But I could see it in the way he moved, slower, like gravity had turned against him. This wasn't just about one day. It was about what one day symbolized. Later that afternoon, I drove to my parents' house without telling anyone. I needed to see the place with my own eyes, to remember why this choice hurt so much. The house was just as I remembered, pristine lawn, bamboo wind chimes, plastic covers still on the dining room chairs even after 25 years. My mother opened the door before I could knock. She looked surprised, but not unhappy. She stepped aside and said, "Come in, Con." My father was in the living room, reading a Vietnamese newspaper. He folded it slowly, like he knew why I was there. "I need to understand," I said. "I need to hear it from you. Why can't Aaron come?" My father didn't answer. My mother did. "It's not about hate. It's about harmony. About keeping peace with the elders." "But why does peace only exist when Aaron isn't around?" I asked. "Why is it that in order to keep harmony, I have to fracture my marriage?" "He's not one of us," my father said softly. "He doesn't understand our ways. He never tried." "That's not true," I snapped. "He tried. He tried so hard. You just refuse to see it." My mother touched my hand. "It's not about effort. It's about foundation. Blood. Language. History." I pulled away. "Then what about me? I have that blood, that language. But you're asking me to choose between it and my husband." A long silence passed. Then my father said, "Sometimes we must choose. Because not all things can be held at once." And that was the moment I knew, they weren't going to bend. I left without saying goodbye. When I got home, Aaron was folding laundry on the bed. He looked up. "How did it go?" "They won't change their minds," I said. "They want me there. But not you." He nodded slowly. "So, what will you do?" I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. "I don't know." He put down the towel in his hands and came to sit beside me. "Lena, I want you to go." I turned to him in disbelief. "What?" "I want you to go to the wedding. Without me." "No." Yes, he said. You need closure. And if you don't go, they'll blame me forever. They'll say I kept you away. I don't want that. But I'll hate myself for it. Maybe, he said gently. But sometimes you have to walk into the fire to understand where you stand in it. I cried that night. Not because I was being forced to choose, but because the choice was killing something in me either way. 2 days before the wedding, I called my brother, Dewey. Hey, he said, cheerful. You're coming, right? I am, I said. But Aaron isn't. There was a long pause. They told you not to bring him? Yes. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't know they'd actually go through with that. You didn't stop them. I didn't know how. Do you agree with them? I asked, my voice shaking. I just want the day to go smoothly, he said. No fights. No drama. And you think Aaron being there would cause drama? Another pause. Then, finally, it might. I hung up. I didn't say goodbye. The morning of the wedding, I got dressed alone. A pale blue Audi my mother had left for me in a dry cleaning bag, no note attached. I almost didn't wear it. But I put it on. Not for her. Not for them. For the girl I used to be, the one who still wanted to believe she could be both a daughter and a wife. Aaron stood by the door as I got ready. You look beautiful, he said. Even if I hate what you're doing. I kissed him on the cheek and whispered, me too. The ceremony was beautiful. The kind of beauty that hides splinters beneath its silk. The elders beamed. The altar was drenched in marigolds and gold. Lynn looked radiant. Dewey looked proud. And I smiled through it all, because I knew the cameras were watching. My mother hugged me. My father nodded his approval. No one asked where Aaron was. No one had to. During the dinner, as people clinked glasses and gave speeches, I stood outside in the courtyard, away from the laughter, watching the lights flicker in the koi pond. That's when Lynn found me. I'm glad you came, she said. Are you? I asked. She hesitated. I know what they asked of you. I don't agree with it. But I also know what it means to grow up with expectations you never agreed to. I looked at her and saw myself in her eyes. A future daughter-in-law trying not to drown in a legacy she didn't choose. I hope you survive it, I said. I hope they don't turn you into something you're not. She didn't answer. Just gave me a sad smile and walked back inside. When I got home that night, Aaron was asleep on the couch, a blanket draped across his chest, the TV still on. I stood over him for a long time, watching the man who had waited for me even when I walked away. And that was when I knew. My family didn't make me choose. They simply revealed which love was conditional, and which one never was. The morning after the wedding, the house was quiet. Too quiet. I sat at the kitchen counter with a mug of cold coffee and stared at nothing. The silence wasn't peaceful, it was haunted. It carried the weight of something I had crossed, a boundary that couldn't be uncrossed. When Aaron woke up, he didn't say good morning. He just came over, kissed the top of my head, and poured himself a cup. Then he leaned against the counter across from me and looked at me for a long time. You're not okay, he said. I'm not sure what okay even looks like anymore, I replied. He nodded. Do you regret going? I opened my mouth. Closed it. I don't know. Because how could I explain what it felt like to sit among the people who raised me and feel like I was trespassing? How do you describe the ache of realizing you're no longer seen as a daughter, but as something other, a symbol of defiance? Or worse, betrayal. My phone buzzed with messages from aunts and cousins. You looked beautiful. So proud of you. It was so lovely seeing you again. Not one of them mentioned Aaron. Not one asked about him. Later that afternoon, my mother called. I saw you left before the dancing, she said. You always loved that part. I didn't feel like celebrating. A pause. You did the right thing, Lena. You avoided making a scene. That's what family does. We protect each other's face. I felt my stomach twist. Did we protect each other, or did I just erase part of myself to make you comfortable? Her voice grew sharper. You're being dramatic. You know this was never about Aaron personally. Then what was it? I demanded. Because it sure felt personal when you asked me to walk in there alone. She went quiet for a long moment. Then she said, you know, sometimes I think you forget where you come from. That hit harder than I expected. Because deep down, that was the fear, wasn't it? That in choosing Aaron, I had somehow become less Vietnamese. Less us. That I had lost my family because I dared to define my future without letting them script it first. I never forgot, I whispered. You just stopped recognizing me. I hung up before she could respond. That night, Aaron and I lay in bed with our backs to each other, not in anger, but in exhaustion. The kind of weariness that doesn't come from fighting, but from holding everything in. And then he said something I didn't expect. Do you ever wonder, he began, if we made a mistake? I turned to him slowly. You mean marrying me? He winced. No. Never that. But maybe, marrying into a family that never wanted me. I didn't answer. Because I had wondered. Not because I doubted him. But because I hated what it was doing to him. To us. Over the next few weeks, the silence from my parents turned from deliberate to complete. No calls. No texts. Not even a forwarded family meme in the group chat. It was as if I had walked off a cliff and they had decided to pretend I'd never existed. I tried to distract myself with work. I poured energy into a project I had been delaying, organizing a leadership workshop for young Asian American women. It was something I cared deeply about, a space I had always wished existed when I was younger. But even there, I couldn't escape it. One of the guest speakers, a second-generation Chinese-American professor, shared a line that hit me like lightning. When you stand at the edge of two cultures, the weight isn't in choosing one, it's in being told you can't belong to both. That was it. That was what I had been feeling all along. I wasn't just grieving a rupture with my parents, I was mourning the illusion that I could hold both worlds in my hands and have them coexist without conflict. That weekend, Aaron and I drove to the coast. He had planned it weeks ago as a surprise, and I almost canceled, but something told me to go. We stayed at a quiet cabin with tall windows that looked out at the fog-covered sea. The first night, we drank wine by the fireplace. I curled up beside him and finally let myself cry. I feel like I lost a country, I said through tears. You didn't, he whispered. You just lost people who couldn't see how much you carried it with you. We made love that night like we were holding each other together. No anger. No blame. Just the kind of intimacy born from survival. But when we got back to the city, the spell broke. A letter was waiting in our mailbox. From my father. No return address. Just a plain white envelope. Inside was a folded sheet of paper and a small red envelope. The kind we give during Tet. The letter read. Lena. You brought shame to the family by challenging our decisions. But I also know I never gave you space to ask why we made them. This is not forgiveness. This is not an invitation. This is acknowledgement. Your mother still believes you owe her an apology. I believe we owe you one too, but I won't say it in words I don't know how to speak. The red envelope is from your grandmother. She asked me to give it to you after the wedding. She said you looked strong. She said your husband looked kind. She asked me why he wasn't there. I told her he was not welcome. She said, then maybe we are the ones who should not be. I don't know what to do with that. So I'm giving it to you. Bah. I sat on the floor and stared at the letter for a long time. Then I opened the red envelope. Inside was a single $2 bill and a note written in shaky Vietnamese script. For your future. May it never be decided by fear. Aaron found me still sitting there an hour later. When he asked what it was, I handed him the letter. He read it. Then looked at me. What do you want to do? I folded the paper carefully. I don't know, I said. But for the first time. I think they're listening. I didn't go back right away. For weeks after my father's letter arrived, I let it sit folded on my desk, weighed down by a mug filled with dead pens. I didn't touch it. I didn't talk about it. But I read it. Over and over. Like scripture written in a language I was only just beginning to understand. That line from my grandmother, then maybe we are the ones who should not be. It echoed louder than anything else. I hadn't seen her since the wedding. She had been quiet that day, sitting in the corner of the banquet hall in her velvet audai, eyes always on me but never speaking. Now I wondered what she had been thinking. What she had wanted to say. One morning in mid-September, I called her. I don't know why that day. Maybe the air was cooler. Maybe the silence between my parents and me had grown so loud I needed to speak to someone who remembered me before I became a battleground. She picked up after 2 rings. Lena, she said, like I hadn't vanished for months. Like I had just called last week. Con Ko Kong? I didn't realize I was crying until I tried to answer and couldn't. She didn't ask why. She just said, come. 2 hours later, I was driving toward Little Saigon with a bag of persimmons, some red bean pastries from her favorite bakery, and a heart pounding so loudly I thought it might crack my ribs. She opened the door before I knocked. She was smaller than I remembered, or maybe I was just taller now in every sense. She hugged me tightly and said nothing about the time I had been gone, the wedding, or my parents. We sat at her kitchen table drinking warm nuoc gung, steam rising between us like forgiveness waiting for words. Your BA, she said eventually, is too proud. And your me is too scared. They were raised in a world where obedience was love. You gave them something they never learned how to handle, freedom. I nodded slowly. They think I betrayed them. You did, she said gently. But not in the way they think. You betrayed the version of you they built in their heads. The obedient daughter. The one who would marry within the lines. But that daughter never truly existed. I wanted to be her for a long time. I know, she said. And that was love, too. I asked her if she thought they'd ever accept Aaron. She didn't answer right away. She just placed her hand over mine and said, that's not the real question. Then what is? Whether you can live without their acceptance, and still love them without losing yourself. I went home that evening lighter and heavier at the same time. Aaron was in the backyard, tending to the small lemon tree we'd planted when we moved in. It hadn't produced anything yet. But he watered it anyway, like he believed it would one day bloom. I watched him for a long time before going out and wrapping my arms around his waist from behind. They might never love you the way I want them to, I said. They may never say your name without a sigh. But I'm done waiting for that. He turned and looked at me, brushing hair from my face. So what does that mean? It means I want to invite them to dinner. His eyebrows raised. Here? I nodded. He paused. Are you sure? No, I admitted. But I want them to see what they've refused to look at. Not just you, but us. What we've built. What they've missed. He kissed me softly. Okay. Let's burn the rice together. We sent the invitation through my grandmother. A message relayed the old way, through tea and whispers and folded napkins. My father didn't respond. My mother texted me the next morning, we will come. Only for 1 hour. I expected as much. The night they arrived, I was more nervous than I had been on my wedding day. I wore something simple, familiar, a pale pink blouse, jeans, hair tied back in the way my mother used to braid it when I was a child. Aaron wore a navy button-down and the good socks he knew my father would notice. We cooked everything ourselves. Lemongrass chicken, garlic green beans, jasmine rice, and a pumpkin curry I had learned from my grandmother as a child. Erin made dessert, cheesecake with mango glaze. My parents arrived exactly at 6 p.m. Not a minute earlier. Not a minute late. They brought nothing, not even words. The first 10 minutes were awkward. Like strangers stuck in an elevator. But eventually, my mother complimented the food. My father asked about the tree in the backyard. Erin answered. Gently. Patiently. Then, halfway through the meal, my father asked Erin, "Do you know how to eat durian?" We froze. It was a strange question. But Erin, bless him, smiled and said, "I've tried. I think it tried me back." My father laughed. Not a full one. But something broke open in his face. Later that evening, while clearing dishes, my mother approached me quietly. "I saw the letter your BA wrote," she said. "It took him 3 weeks to decide whether to send it." "Why?" "Because he thought you would hate him." "I don't." She nodded. "But you pulled away. You pushed first." She didn't argue. She just said, "You've changed." I looked her in the eye. No. I just stopped hiding who I was. Before they left, my father stood in the doorway and looked around the house. He said, "You've built something good here." Then he added, almost reluctantly, "Maybe we were too quick to judge." It wasn't an apology. But it was a door. And for the first time in a long while, it wasn't closed. It didn't get better overnight. That's the first truth I had to accept. One dinner wasn't a miracle. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't healing. But it was a beginning. After that night, my parents didn't shut me out again, but they didn't flood in either. We texted sometimes. They called occasionally. My mother sent me pictures of the temple's new altar arrangement, the one she helped design. My father once mailed me an article about lemon trees, with a handwritten note, "Yours looks dry. Maybe move it near the morning sun." It was something. And something, after everything, felt like everything. Erin noticed the shift too. He was quieter about it than I expected. There was no victory lap, no gloating. Just quiet observations like, "Your mom used an exclamation mark in her last message," and "Your dad didn't stare at the floor this time." We still didn't get invited to family events. Weddings, birthdays, big holidays, they came and went. But my grandmother called every week. And once, she said something I never forgot: "Sometimes the elders don't know how to fix things. But they leave the window open in case you climb back in." By November, my parents invited us for lunch. No special occasion. No festival. Just lunch. I offered to bring dessert. Erin made coconut pandan cake, and my mom complimented the texture. "Very soft," she said. That was high praise. My father asked Erin how work was going. Erin answered in his best attempt at Vietnamese. We all laughed. When we left that day, my mother hugged me a little longer than usual. That was how it began to rebuild, not in grand gestures, but in quiet repetition. But with each visit, each text, each moment of reaching across the divide, I also learned something else. Reconciliation doesn't mean returning to what was. It means building something new. And in that new structure, there are rooms you don't reopen. There are memories you don't redecorate. The wounds between us didn't vanish. They became scars, visible, but no longer bleeding. On our second wedding anniversary, Erin and I held a small dinner at home. Just us. No guests. We cooked together, laughed, opened a bottle of wine we'd been saving. He gave me a framed photo of us from the first year we dated, back when we still thought love would be enough to carry everything. I gave him a letter. In it, I wrote, "You didn't just marry me. You stood beside me while I learned how to stop disappearing." And I know now, love isn't choosing one life over another. It's building the space where both can exist. He read it twice. Then pulled me into his arms, and said, "I don't need a thank you. Just keep choosing us." 3 days later, my brother Dewey called. It was late. I almost didn't pick up. He said, "Hey. Lynn and we're expecting." I froze. "Wow," I managed. "Congratulations." "Thanks. Look, I wanted to tell you before it spreads. And also, we want to invite you and Aaron to the baby shower." I sat down slowly. "Are you sure?" "Lynn is. And so am I. We're not our parents. We want you there. As you are." That was the moment I realized how the change had rippled further than I thought. That maybe the fight I had fought wasn't just for me. That maybe my silence would have taught others to stay quiet, but my defiance taught them something else. The baby shower was awkward at first. My parents were polite. My aunts gave tight smiles. But my grandmother sat between Aaron and me and whispered, "Keep smiling. That makes them nervous." And I did. When the baby was born, we visited the hospital. Dewey let me hold her first. She was tiny, wrapped like a little spring roll, soft and red and new. "I want her to grow up knowing she never has to choose," I whispered. "Not between being loved and being free." Dewey nodded. "She will. Because of you." That night, Aaron and I walked out of the hospital and sat in the car for a while, holding hands, watching the lights of the city blink in the dark. "You know," he said, "I never needed them to love me. I just needed them not to make you choose." "They did," I replied. "And I chose you." He smiled. "But you never gave up on them either." "No," I said. "Because love doesn't always come back the way you gave it. But sometimes, it comes back transformed." He started the engine. We drove home in silence. Not the heavy kind that used to weigh us down, but the soft kind. Like a song we both knew the lyrics to without needing to sing them. 1 year later, my parents hosted Tet. It was the first time in 4 years they invited both of us, without conditions. Aaron wore a navy blue oude my grandmother helped tailor. I wore my favorite jade one. My mother set a seat for us next to hers. My father handed Aaron a red envelope with 2 crisp bills and said, "Thank you for helping the lemon tree bloom." It had bright yellow 8 fruits that year. When I looked around the room that night, I didn't see the family that once asked me to choose. I saw the family I chose to love anyway. And somehow, that made all the difference.